The first time I held Emma, I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I was too exhausted to feel anything except the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down on my chest. She was tiny, red-faced, and already screaming her lungs out, like she knew the world was about to be unfair to both of us. But when she wrapped her little fingers around my thumb, I knew two things with absolute certainty. I was going to love her harder than I'd ever loved anything in my life. And I was going to do this alone. I was 19. Her father had left 3 weeks after I told him I was pregnant. My parents said I brought shame on the family and stopped answering my calls. The day I brought her home from the hospital, it was just the two of us in a second-floor studio apartment that smelled like peeling paint and damp floorboards. But it was ours, and she was mine. I named her Emma Rose. I thought it sounded strong and gentle at the same time. Those early years were the hardest and the best. I worked days cleaning houses, then nights waitressing at a diner off Route 7. I used to carry her in a sling across my chest, while I scrubbed toilets and mopped marble floors I'd never be able to afford. I'd drop her at a neighbor's house in the evenings and pick her up long after dark, when she was already asleep, her little body limp with dreams. We didn't have much, but I made her birthday cakes from scratch. I turned second-hand books into bedtime adventures. I stitched stuffed animals from old pillowcases. And on weekends, when I had a rare moment off, we'd walk to the park, lie on the grass, and I'd point at clouds, asking her what they looked like. Her answer was always the same. They look like you, Mama. They look safe. She was smart, God. She was brilliant. Straight A's in school, always top of her class. I remember crying outside the school auditorium the day she won the city spelling bee. Not because of the trophy, but because she stood there, beaming, and said, "My mom taught me all the big words." Then came the scholarship. A full ride to a prestigious university 3 states away. I helped her pack every box, labeled every bag. I didn't let her see me cry the night she left. She called often in the first semester, sent pictures of her dorm room, her friends, her first snowstorm away from home. But little by little, the calls slowed. She started texting instead, just a busy right now, or talk later. Her voice began to change. It was smoother, sharper, less like the little girl who used to giggle at my silly jokes, and more like someone carefully constructing a new identity. A polished one. She came home for Thanksgiving during her junior year, brought her boyfriend Thomas. I wore my best dress, even had my hair done, spent all night making a roast from a YouTube recipe, but when he walked in, she didn't even introduce me as her mom. Just, "This is Linda." Linda, not Mom. I laughed it off, told myself she was just nervous. But before he arrived, I remember her pulling me aside, fixing my scarf, and whispering, "Just don't say too much, okay? He's used to a certain kind of environment." That one hurt. More than she'll ever know. 2 years later, I found out she was engaged through Instagram. A perfectly staged photo, her hand extended, a sparkling diamond catching the light. Her caption read, "He said yes rings. Buckles, I'm the luckiest girl alive." Thousands of likes, dozens of comments. Not a single call to me. I stared at that photo for over an hour. I zoomed in on her face, her perfect teeth, her flawless makeup, the way she tilted her head toward him like he was her whole world. My daughter, my baby, and I wasn't even worth a text. Still, I waited. I thought maybe the invite had gotten lost. Maybe she was planning a surprise. I convinced myself of 1,000 excuses because the truth, that she'd left me behind, was just too painful to accept. A week passed, then 2, so I called her. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "Hey, Mom," she said, a little too cheerful. "Everything okay? Hi, sweetheart," I replied, swallowing the lump in my throat. I saw the news, you're engaged. A pause. Oh yeah, sorry, I meant to tell you sooner. Everything's been so crazy with planning and, that's wonderful. I interrupted gently. I'm really happy for you. Another silence, then I asked as softly as I could, Am I invited to the wedding? She was quiet for so long, I thought the coal had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. Mom. She sighed. I wanted to talk to you about that. Look, it's going to be a very formal event. His family is, well, they're a little traditional. You might not feel comfortable. I froze. What do you mean? I just don't want there to be any awkwardness, she said. You don't really fit in with the crowd that'll be there. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, I don't want to be embarrassed, Mom. This is the biggest day of my life. My heart cracked, embarrassed. I had scrubbed blood from bathroom tiles to buy her textbooks. I had skipped meals so she could eat. I had worked myself to the bone to give her everything. And now I was something to be ashamed of. I understand. I whispered, though I didn't. I hope you do, she said, voice cool. We can do something after the honeymoon, maybe, just you and me. Sure, I lied. That sounds nice, she hung up after that. No, I love you. No, thank you for everything. Just a dial tone. That night, I sat in the dark for hours. No TV, no music, just me, the ticking wall clock, and the silence. I went into my bedroom and pulled out a box from under my bed, her baby shoes, the first drawing she ever gave me, and a letter she wrote in 3rd grade that said, Mom, you're the best mom ever, and I love you more than 100 stars. I held it to my chest and wept. I didn't weep for the wedding I wouldn't attend. I wept for the little girl who once looked at me like I was her entire universe, and for the woman she'd become, who now saw me as a stain on her perfect image. She had her invitation list, and I wasn't on it. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, like fog under a door, filling your lungs slowly until you can't breathe. That's what those first few weeks felt like after Emma told me I wasn't invited to her wedding. No big explosion. No angry fight, just silence, the kind of silence that makes the walls of your home echo with everything you've lost. I stopped answering phone calls. I didn't go to work. I didn't eat much. My world shrank to the 4 walls of my living room, where memories clung to every piece of furniture like ghosts. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at nothing, over and over again. Day became night and back again, and I stopped caring which was which. I kept hearing her voice, you'll embarrass me. I wore those words like a shroud, embarrassment. That's what I was to her. A woman who worked 2 jobs to put her through school, who went without new shoes for 5 winters so she could have a prom dress that made her feel like a queen, who never once missed a parent, teacher conference, or a dentist appointment. I gave her everything, and now she couldn't give me a seat at her wedding. Then one morning, something inside me broke, or maybe it mended. I woke up and didn't cry. Instead, I got up, showered, made tea, and opened the curtains. The sunlight hit the floor in golden stripes. Dust danced in the beams. It was quiet, but it didn't feel so heavy anymore. And that's when I realized Emma may have forgotten where she came from, but I hadn't, and I wasn't going to let her shame define me. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table I built with my own hands, but I was going to remind her, and everyone around her, exactly who I was. It started with a letter, not to Emma. I knew she wouldn't read it. I wrote it to Thomas, her fiancé. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I just told the truth. I told him about raising Emma on my own, about the jobs I worked, the nights I stayed up sewing her costumes, the cold winters without heat. I told him about how smart she was, how kind she used to be, and how she used to call me her superhero. I told him I wasn't writing to force anything. I didn't want to crash their wedding or guilt them. I only wanted someone, just one person, to know the story behind the girl he was about to marry. I placed the letter in a large envelope, along with a few photographs. Emma at 6, missing her front teeth, wearing a tinfoil crown I made her for her birthday. Emma at 9, in a spelling bee ribbon, standing next to me, holding hands. Emma at 13, at a thrift store prom dress fitting, twirling like a ballerina while I clapped. Me and her, always side by side, no gloss, no filters, just us. I mailed it, and I expected nothing. 2 weeks later, I received a phone call. "Is this Linda?" A woman's voice asked, polite but uncertain. "Yes," I answered. "This is Margaret. I'm Thomas's mother." My heart skipped. I sat down slowly. She continued, "I hope this isn't intrusive. I read the letter you sent my son." A pause. "I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say." She cleared her throat. "My son showed me your letter, and well, I had no idea. I thought I knew everything about Emma, but I didn't know about you. Would you have lunch with me sometime?" We met at a little bistro near the city center. She arrived in a soft gray coat, pearls around her neck, her hair swept up in that elegant, effortless way wealthy women seem to master. But her smile was warm, genuine. She didn't treat me like a maid or a charity case. She treated me like a mother. "I'll be honest," she said, setting down her teacup. "When I first met Emma, I found her charming but polished, like someone trying very hard to fit into a mold." I nodded. "She told me her parents were complicated." Margaret said with a small frown that she had a rough upbringing, but she never told us about you. I looked down, embarrassed. "You have no reason to be ashamed," Margaret said gently, quite the opposite. Her words cracked something open inside me, a kindness I hadn't felt in a long time. She continued, "I was raised in privilege. I had help, nannies, money, options, but I never had to fight like you did, and you raised a daughter who became everything she wanted to be. That's extraordinary." I didn't know whether to thank her or cry, but what she said next stopped me cold. "I want you to come to the wedding." I blinked. "Emma said." "Emma doesn't run this family," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Not yet. I do. And I think this family should know the woman who made Emma possible." I shook my head, tears welling up. "I don't want to cause trouble. I just wanted someone to know." She reached across the table and held my hand. "You've caused no trouble. You've just reminded us of something Emma seems to have forgotten. Grace doesn't come from money. It comes from love and dignity and sacrifice." We sat there in silence for a while. Just two mothers, one from silk and marble, the other from grit and rust, sitting across from each other with nothing but truth between them. And for the first time since Emma's phone call, I felt something bloom inside me again. Not revenge, not anger, just power. The quiet, steady kind that comes from remembering who you are after someone tried to make you forget. The next few weeks passed in a strange calm. I went back to work. I started walking again in the evenings, letting the wind clear my mind. I sorted through old photos, dusted off my nicer clothes, even got a fresh haircut for the first time in years. Margaret sent a car to pick me up for a dress fitting. She insisted, said it was a thank you for the way I raised her future daughter-in-law. I tried on a navy blue gown, modest but elegant. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she finally remembered what she was made of. I wasn't attending my daughter's wedding as a guest. I was attending as a reminder, not out of spite, but out of truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't raise a fuss. I had raised a woman. And now the world would know what it cost me. The morning of the wedding, the sky was soft and overcast, one of those days where everything feels like it's holding its breath. I stood at the edge of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the navy blue dress Margaret had insisted I keep. My hands trembled slightly. I hadn't worn anything this elegant in decades. The fabric fell over my body like water. Simple, clean, dignified. I didn't look like someone trying to prove something. I looked like someone who knew exactly who she was. At 10 sharp, a black car arrived at my apartment. The driver greeted me by name, and opened the door with a polite nod. As I stepped inside, I glanced once at my reflection in the window. Not a trace of shame, not a hint of weakness. Just me, the mother who wasn't invited but came anyway. The venue was something out of a movie. White stone walls draped in ivy, gold-accented arches, blooming floral arrangements at every entrance. There were strings of fairy lights, even though it was midday, and violinists tuning their instruments under a glass canopy. People turned when I entered, not because they knew who I was, but because I didn't look like I didn't belong. I walked beside Margaret, who wore a soft lilac gown and pearls that shimmered with the grace of generations. She placed a gentle hand on my back and led me to our seats near the front. Emma didn't see me at first, but when she did, her whole body stiffened. She was across the lawn, surrounded by bridesmaids, laughing at something. But the moment her eyes landed on mine, her laughter stopped cold, her smile faltered, she took a step forward. Then another. Her heels clicked sharply against the stone tiles until she stood right in front of me. "Mom," she said, breathless, voice low and sharp. "What are you doing here? I was invited," I replied calmly. She blinked, looked around. "By who? By me?" Margaret said, stepping forward. "She's my guest, and I'm honored to have her here." Emma's cheeks flushed, not with joy. With panic. "Why would you do that?" she hissed, eyes flicking between us. "This is my day. You've gone behind my back." "I didn't come to cause trouble," I said softly. "I came because I wanted to see the woman I raised get married." "You had no right," she whispered. "No," I said, "but I had love, and that used to be enough." Before she could answer, Thomas approached. He looked clean and sharp, in a white tuxedo, nerves buzzing just beneath his skin. When he saw me, his eyes widened. But not in anger, in recognition. "Linda," he said quietly. I nodded. He took a long breath. "I read your letter." Emma turned to him, confused. "You what?" "I read all of it," he said. "I saw the pictures, the story, everything." Her face drained of color. "You weren't supposed to." "She's not what you said she was, Emma." He looked at me again. "She's incredible." Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out. She turned, stormed away, but the wedding went on. The guests were seated. The music began, and as Emma walked down the aisle, everything looked perfect on the surface. Her dress was stunning, her hair flawless, her smile well practiced, but it didn't reach her eyes, not anymore. I sat beside Margaret, hands folded neatly in my lap. My heart beat steadily, not with hope or pain, but peace. When the vows were exchanged and the applause faded, the microphone was handed to Thomas for his groom's speech. He stood in front of a room filled with luxury, tradition, and expectation, and broke all of it. "I know I'm supposed to thank everyone here today," he began. "But there's someone I want to thank most of all. Someone I didn't even know until 2 weeks ago." He turned to face me. "Linda, you're the reason this day exists." People turned in their seats. "You raised Emma on your own, gave her everything when you had nothing. You sacrificed your comfort, your time, your youth, your dreams, to make hers possible." He looked out at the crowd. "I've heard a lot about legacy from my family, about pride and appearances. But real legacy isn't money or reputation. It's love. It's sweat. It's showing up when no one else will. That's what Linda did." A ripple of emotion swept through the room. She didn't ask to be here today. She was told not to come. And yet she did, with grace, with kindness, and with love. He raised his glass toward me, to Linda. There was a pause, and then, one by one, glasses lifted, to Linda. Voices echoed. Even some of Emma's bridesmaids joined. Emma looked as if she wanted to vanish into the ground. Later, outside under the soft lights, I stood near the garden, breathing in the night air. Margaret joined me again, offering a quiet smile. "You okay?" she asked. "I am now." "Thomas meant every word," she said. "You gave him a gift, a glimpse into truth. I didn't come to ruin anything." I said again, more to myself than to her. "I know," she replied. "You came to remind." As the evening wore down, Emma finally approached. No photographers. No bridesmaids, just her. Her dress trailed behind her like a ghost of something pure that had been soiled by pride. She stood in front of me, arms folded. "I didn't ask you to come." "No," I said, "you didn't." Her voice cracked. "Why did you have to ruin everything?" I looked her in the eyes. Truly looked. "You think I came to shame you, but I didn't." "Then why?" "I came to remind you of the woman who raised you to be strong, who stood in fire so you could walk in light. I came to make peace with myself." Her face twisted, conflicted. "Angry, guilty, lost. I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "I hope one day you'll mean that." I said gently. "But I'm not here to wait." I touched her cheek, just once, and I walked away. I didn't stay for the cake. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming the space I gave up for her, brick by brick, without apology. She had her wedding, I had my closure, and that was enough.